Welcome to episode 51 and the best of 2019, Construction Nation. This is Sue Dyer, your host of Construction Dream Team. We've had so many wonderful guests this year that I thought we should look back at some of the episodes. So for the month of December, we're going to be doing the best of 2019 each week. We're going to do this as a countdown. The number 5 to number 1. Now, the selections for these have been based on a few things: the total number of downloads, the number of downloads the month that the episode was released, and which episodes received the most comments. So drum roll, number 5 in our countdown is episode number 2. Where Ivar Satero, the director at San Francisco International Airport, shares about how he leads with values. What I really love about this episode is how Ivar shows us how having strong organizational values has helped him be assured that all of his people are working and solving problems in a way that is consistent with these values. Wow, that really is the power of leading with values. Here is episode number 2. Enjoy. Welcome to episode number 2, Construction Nation. This is Sue Dyer, your host of Construction Dream Team, where I interview industry leaders and experts so you can learn how to build your construction dream team based on OPE, other people's experiences. The shortest way to success is to learn from others who have been there and done that. And today I am very excited to have our guest, Ivar Satero, who is the director at San Francisco International Airport. Ivar became the director in July of 2016, but he's been there a while, and right now he's overseeing a $7 billion construction program. And before, he served as the chief operating officer and oversaw, before that, as deputy of design and construction, a $3.5 billion master plan. So he has learned a great deal and has many lessons for us today. He's definitely one of my favorite people, and we are glad that he has decided to take some time and join us today. So welcome, Ivar.
Thanks. It's good to be with you, Sue, and your audience as well.
Thank you. Well, tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming the director at San Francisco International Airport.
So I have been with SFO for just over 24 years now, and a large proportion of that time was involved with construction programs. And as Sue mentioned, we had a $3 billion program of the 90s where we really transformed our airport. And I had the good fortune of working on some very exciting projects, our light rail system, which we call AirTrain, as well as the new BART connection into SFO, which is our regional transit system. And so about 20 years in design and construction at SFO. And then I got the job as chief operating officer and gained experience in all of the operational aspects of the airport. And then for the past 2.5 years, I've been the director. And, I think about I worked for a single director throughout my career here, John Martin. And really that opened up so many opportunities. And John always thought of himself as not only the director of an airport, but a developer as well, and really prepared our airport for the future by focusing in capital programs and putting together great teams. And even during the times, during the low times in recession, John saw the importance of keeping a core team together and looking to the future and recognizing that we would get into growth again at our airport as economic conditions recovered. And I think that's been a hallmark of our success, particularly after 9/11. And we had all of the facilities prepared, but also in 2007 with the recession of 2007. But we were continuing and determined to implement our Terminal 2 renovation. And so as director now for about 2.5 years, I see that as also my role in this. I have that development background, and I'm looking to the future, and I'm seeing continuous growth on the horizon for our airport and for the region. And we'll continue to have that focus of preparing our facilities. So it's been an incredible journey, and I had the good fortune of working with some really great people along the way.
It's so interesting that with your background and having a $7 billion program now, in thinking of yourselves as developers, that's got to be unique, I would think, in aviation. Not sure that everyone has that, but I know that many of the airports are struggling with the large programs they have. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I think if you don't have a development background, you should have certainly what we have as a chief development officer, someone that is very knowledgeable about development and thinking about other directors' airport development plans and other agencies' development plans for the future. Rest assured that you will need to implement those plans at some point. And so, building a team, I think another kind of core success factor is just the team we have at our airport and running our own programs and having that control and having that ownership, I think has really set us apart. And so I would just say, if you don't have that as a background, bring that on, that leadership experience and development, and then build your team and prepare for your next development. If you're in a bit of in an interim period, but have that determination to continue and push through, because the best time to build things is when there's a lull in the economy. And so we were able to buy so much more content in our Terminal 2 project back in 2007 through 2010, basically got 30% more on a $400 million project than we would have otherwise gotten, which gave us that launch pad for Virgin America to make that decision to corporate and have those opportunities to grow. So it's all about preparing for the future, and it is instrumental to think about the needs of your facility for the future and not get so bogged down in the day-to-day operational aspects and challenges.
It's interesting too that you were able to plow into a big project when the economy's down. I think a lot of owners would do just the opposite, because they would see, oh, we're not sure. Maybe our revenues won't be there to support it. So maybe I better not dive in. And so I think that is a unique thing as well.
Yeah, it's pretty bold to keep moving through those times. And, we had the benefit of a very astute director then, and with a determination to prepare for the future. And so it takes that courage and that confidence that things are going to get better, and not to put things aside and wait and hope, but to actually put things in motion and prepare, even if it's at the very initial phases of preparing. Prepare yourself, because 9 times out of 10, it'll put you in a much better place. And that's what we saw after 9/11. We had prepared and we had pushed through when a lot of airports, for example, really suspended their capital programs and have spent the last decade really catching up and suffering through a lot of congestion issues because of the growth the air travel industry has experienced, and because of decisions they made not to proceed with capital programs and move right into a cost-cutting mode.
Pretty interesting. That takes us into, I know SFO is very values driven. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, and I credit partnering to a large extent for where we are now with the values of our organization. And we have always had a culture, not as well defined, and certainly we didn't have the focus on culture until about 2009, 2010. And really it was coincident with Terminal 2 that we really started to focus on culture. And Terminal 2 was that moment where we were looking to the future. We had a big capital project we know we needed to do, and we needed to get it done. We had a 30-month time frame, and it really was a linchpin in Virgin America's decision to corporate out of SFO. And we all know what's happened since that time. But the need to do things differently versus the experience we had back in the 90s around project delivery. And as I stated before, John Martin, our former director, recognized the importance of keeping together a core group of people preparing for the future. And so there were a number of us that had worked through the capital program of the 90s, and then certainly a much more lean time in the early 2000s. But that 2007 very modest capital program between 2002 to 2007 to the tune of 50 million a year versus now what we're doing and what we're doing back in the 90s. And so with that Terminal 2 and with that need to do things differently, what we saw was we delivered some really great projects back in the 90s. But when you talk about what an exceptional project is, at that time we talked about project delivery around budget and schedule. We didn't talk about the success of the project in terms of exceptional outcomes. And so we started to focus on what makes a project exceptional. And it was about the stakeholders. It was about all of the other parts of our operation. And whether you're an airport or a transit agency or anything else, you need to think about success in terms of what happens on day one of opening to 40 years of owning and operating a facility. And so that was the fundamental shift that we had with Terminal 2. And the only way to get done what we needed to get done was to have a cultural shift as well. And we've always been aligned with partnering in our projects, but we saw an opportunity to embed the values of partnering into our overall airport. We have 2,000 employees here and saw an opportunity really to try to move us in a direction of a partnering culture as a total operation as well as in our project delivery. So that was really fundamental. In 2010, we took on a very concerted effort to define and implement a culture at SFO. And it was basically building off of the partnering around collaboration and communication and teamwork, ultimately trying to build trust throughout the organization. And so those were the really initial phases of building what is now a very well-defined, and we do a lot of work in it every year, and it is a very well saturated culture in the organization, meaning it's not just the top layers that talk about it. It is really felt throughout the organization. And I get a lot of feedback, and we do annual climate surveys around that. But our culture now is very much aligned with our very substantial and extensive partnering program. And so that really gives us that leverage to do great projects with exceptional outcomes that go well beyond just the core of project delivery in terms of budget and schedule and quality as it's defined by engineers and architects and project management professionals.
That sounds awesome. I know most companies have a list of core values on their wall, but it seems to me, I remember standing in the post office and seeing this list of values on the wall. It's like, well, customer service is number one. And there was a line of about 300 people behind me. And then they closed all the windows because it was lunchtime. So it's like, so a lot of companies have lists of values, but they're really just a piece of paper or a poster that's on the wall. What are your values and how have you gone about embedding these? You've talked about partnering, you've talked about internal, so what are the values and how have you gone about embedding these into the overall culture?
Well, the values, as I said, they align well with partnering, but I'll talk about, and it's, for us, it's been a bit of a living organism. Because as the industry and as our airport has evolved, we've seen a need to realign our values, not realign, really supplement our values. Let me say that. And they're around, we are one team. We say that, and we think a lot about that in project delivery. We treat everyone with respect. We communicate fully. We strive to be the best. We are innovative. We are open to new ideas. We are committed to being a great place to work. We are each responsible for the airport's success, and we take pride in SFO. And these may seem obvious, but when you put them all together and you work hard and you task your people and performance divisions to really test the saturation level, you find real meaning in these. And what we try to do is is show the meaning by example. And so we do a lot of talking about successes, but also learning from failures. And we've had a lot of significant challenges as we've really worked to get these values implemented throughout the organization. But you know what? At the end of the day, we found weaknesses that now have become strengths. And it has been so transformational for so many of our employees. And I'll say that I talked about it being kind of a living organism, is that in the wake of, we all have very challenging and traumatizing incidents. And for us, I'll say that the Asiana crash 5 years ago was a very traumatizing, but also a defining moment for us. And we recognized, and we did probably one of the most exhaustive post-incident self-reviews. And although we had no part in the cause of the accident, we certainly found opportunity to strengthen our organization around safety of our operations. And so we actually added a new core value, and we were all kind of surprised that it wasn't part of our core values, but our new core value and our highest order core value is safety and security is our highest priority. And so we think about that, and we talk about that in our meetings. We have what's called a Reaching for Number One initiative, and that's where we engage the broader airport community, the staff, as well as outside the staff and the broader community in solving really challenging airport projects. And so people get involved, they learn more about the airport, they learn to work with different divisions, and we talk about the values in those sessions as well. And then, like I said, we do follow-ups and climate surveys, and we ask questions around the values of our organization. And we ask questions, we ask all levels of the staff, do your managers believe in the values? And do you have examples and that kind of thing? And so we really test this, and we spend a lot of time and through Reaching for Number One and through our climate surveys. And then in our partnering, in our partnering, our values are on the wall there. And we talk about those values in partnering for all of our projects.
So it sounds like you have really a full structure here. You have the Reaching for Number One initiative where people inside the organization, all different levels, get involved. So they're helping to co-create what these values mean and implement it. And then you have at your projects, you have your partnering, structured collaborative partnering process. And then you have feedback for all of these so that you know where you're at, so that people can then continue to move forward. So that sounds like you've got it structured in there. That's pretty darn cool. It isn't just a wish and a dream and a piece of paper on the wall.
No, and it's a laminated card I carry with me at all times as well.
So anybody, when you see Ivar, you have to tell him, bring out your card. I want to see your card. And in the show notes, I'm going to put the poster that has the Reaching for Number One values. Core values, so that everyone can see them too and hopefully learn from them. So, everything's good now, but I bet everything wasn't always great. So what's some of the worst moments you've ever faced and how you saw these core values come to life?
And I'll talk about it as director. I was not the director during the Asiana crash, but I would say that that's probably our worst moment in our history. But for me, in the last 2.5 years as director, and again, focused on the safety and security of our operation, we had an incident. And, you think about your worst moments are around the safety and security of all of your operations. And it doesn't matter what kind of agency you are or a contractor, we're all hyper focused on safety for all the right reasons. And so we've been very fortunate. And I think because of the values of our organization and our partnering efforts that we have a very enviable OSHA score in our capital program, recordables and lost times. We're well ahead of industry standards. But as far as our operation, very challenging, complicated operation with the growth we've seen. And so there was one of the airfield workers who lost his leg in an incident about 2 years ago, right after I became director. And to me, that was a cause for action. And when you see a lot of small things happen, sometimes you turn a blind eye to those things. But we know a lot of small things will eventually become a major thing. And so this was a major thing. And I saw our team really see that as another one of those defining moments that we need to do something different. And the team really took it on and really came up with a new program around ground service equipment, monitoring and maintenance. And really now we have, I think, industry leading around all of the equipment, the 5,000 pieces of equipment that move around our airport every day, and all of the operations. And it took that kind of incident to really get the attention of industry with our staff coming together and working as a team. It's not about punishment. It's about collaboration and finding ways. With our service providers, we're attached at the hip. We have a mutual need for one another, and we have to work together. So, the carrot and the stick, you have to think about that. And the punishment doesn't typically lead to greater success. So how can we work together and really work on what was a big cultural issue on the airfield, and safety issue? And it was a lot of, in my opinion, it was negligence by these service providers that support all the airline's operations. And it took a partnership with one of the biggest ones to step forward and recognize something had to be done differently. And they came in with a $12 million investment to improve the operations, both the maintenance of the equipment, the training of the staff, but also wages. Wages were a big issue because of turnover, which was about 100% turnover. And with this program, all the other ones had to follow suit and be competitive. So I see that. And now the turnover is down to 20%, and we see much greater success in this program around the behavior of the operators and the quality of maintenance of the equipment and the ownership. I think what that translates to is the ownership our staff feels about the airfield and the safety of its operations, and that has really, I think, energized them and caused them to really push forward and recognize the role they play and how significant it is. And so it brought us together and really showed the values in action that we are one team, that we have to communicate, but we have to have partnerships and work together and try to build that trust that we're going to mutually solve problems in a productive way, not in a way that works against us by damaging relationships and creates a lack of trust.
That is so awesome. Did you hear that, Construction Nation? It's not about punishment. It's about collaboration, because I think most large organizations, especially when something is negative happens, people go to their corner and come out fighting instead of going to the table and talking to each other and how do we learn from this and make it better. That certainly sounds like the value is playing out. Anything else that comes to your mind, Ivar, about worst moments? Or
just that things happen every day here, and I see the results of that focus on values and teamwork playing out every day on the construction sites. We're this past month, we spent $141 million in construction, our biggest month ever, as part of our $7 billion capital program. And so imagine the complexity and the challenges every day, but it's just rarely does something become my problem up to my level. It is dealt with in the field and effectively dealt with. And so schedules are maintained, and we're hitting all the milestones. And this 2019 is an exciting year for opening of our hotel and our Terminal 1. Budgets are talked about and worked through issues, and safety continues to be the top of everyone's mind. And so I see it playing out every day, and it's continues to energize me and keep us moving in the right direction.
So what steps do you think project leaders and their organization leaders can take to establish some real core values that they live by?
I think it starts with communication and really getting to know your partners and being, we talk about transparency, but it's true, that you have to, how do you build trust? And you build trust by building bridges, and you build bridges by communicating and having the conversations and the difficult conversations. And so really it's about that. It's about working through solutions together. not just going into your separate corners and figuring out a solution and that may not be the ideal solution and may cause issues for the other partnerships. And so it's just really about working together and working through issues together. And as you know, what you find is as you work through issues together, that alone builds trust because you find yourself on the same side of the problem, not in opposing corners with competing solutions, but working together with as we all talk about, Sue, our collective wisdom. And that gives you the best solutions, and even to the extent of engaging stakeholders. And I think we've been very effective at that because ultimately a project solution may not be a stakeholder solution. And then it becomes very difficult, especially at the end of projects where you're ready to open. And there's a lot of problems potentially with how the operation, how the decisions were made and what the final product is. And so ultimately having the stakeholders by your side and in the solutions oriented corner as well makes all the difference in the world. And we've seen that time and again with very challenging projects that have had exceptional results because of that.
So you've mentioned a few times the partnering and just full disclosure to everyone. I am the partnering facilitator at SFO, been there for a couple decades, but you talked about doing structured collaborative partnering and we do it on every project and we do it every month and we have a scorecard every month. And so tell us your thoughts behind that, because I think a lot of owners go, man, that's a lot. And how do you justify the cost of all of that? So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think my first thought is it starts at the very top of the organization. You will not be successful in partnering if the leadership doesn't support and see the importance of it. And we've been fortunate to have that kind of leadership over the years. And so I sit in the partnering meetings and I make my expectations clear, and it really helps to set the right tone. And I require the presidents and senior VPs of the contractors, the construction companies, the designers, the project management support, they all need to be in there and they need to be ensuring that the values are in their organizations and also the vetting of their people. How important, we all know how important it is to have the right person, and the wrong person can really sour a team. And so my expectation is from the leaders that they will bring the right people to our projects. And so it starts at the top, particularly in the kickoff and setting the right tone for things.
And what about the cost? Is this cost prohibitive, or is it only good for really large programs, or seems like you're making a big financial investment?
Yeah, and it's not just in the cost of the facilitation, but, the resources you dedicate to this. And it's only as good as, the work you put into it. And so I look at it like this. I look at budgeting, 7.5% for unforeseen conditions and contingencies and program reserves. And we all build in for these risks that we see in construction. But the biggest risk is not communicating and not working together on problem solving and projects getting delayed and budgets overrunning. And so, I ran the numbers because I love numbers. And basically, I'm looking at about a half of 1% investment in partnering on our program, 0.5%. But I budget 7.5% for things like unforeseen conditions and owner changes. And so in terms of return on investment, 0.5% in partnering is 10 times the value that you would otherwise get just by budgeting in it for direct costs related to unforeseens and owner changes and those kind of things. So from a risk management perspective, it more than makes up for that small investment. And it brings your team in on projects, and their involvement and their ownership early on in a project, and I will say even at the planning stage, that is instrumental in the quality of the final outcome. And I should have also mentioned that, we do it in various layers. Our partnerships, our partnering program in various layers, including when I talked about the CEO level, we have an executive level partnering session we do, and we do that regularly every month. sometimes quarterly. And then we have our core team. And in fact, in the core team, it's the project management team. It's even the superintendents and the subcontractors as well. And then we have our stakeholders. And we always, like I said, how important that is in terms of the quality of the outcome. So it's really three levels of partnering that we engage in as part of our, obviously a very rigorous partnering program. But I'll tell you, the results are undeniable. We have on a $7.2 billion program, we're 65% bought out. And we have 450 million left in reserves. And I haven't seen a significant slip in any schedule. And there are zero claims to date. So I rely on those results to tell me what we're doing is working.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to what you said before too about embedding the values internally. Here's again the structured part that allows those norms to play out in a way that's meaningful. I also know you're the president of the International Partnering Institute. Full disclosure, I was the founder. But so tell us more about IPI and what advice you might give to owners about getting involved in IPI.
And in order for partnering to work, it has to be more broadly implemented and appreciated. And, really the ownership resides to me to a large extent with the owners that should require this of their contractors. And as the success that we've seen, I think everyone can set up their programs for success through partnering. And so it's how we do business. And it's not just on the 100, 500 and the $1 billion programs. It's even on the smaller projects where it has great effect. And so, I think getting involved, really important. There's so many great resources available in IPI, and it allows you to get started without a lot of investment with building an understanding and then talking about it with your team and how to get some traction. And, if you're asking yourself, is it right for you? I'll tell you, it's right for you. And I don't care what kind of project delivery you're doing. Our most successful partner projects have been lump sum, low bid, accelerated, incentive-based projects. Everything's stacked up against us, and they've been hugely successful and even exceeded my own expectations. And I can talk about, Sue, at some point we can highlight the runway overlay, and I still talk about that. And I talk about Terminal 2, and I talk about the tower. It's just these milestone projects that are, for us, milestones because of the quality of the end deliverable, but because of the quality of the implementation too. And it's not about, a beautiful building. It's about all of the work that went into it to create something that is a beautiful building or is a runway back in service much earlier than anticipated, or pipelines that got done with very minor disruption to our airline operations. So it's everything, and it can be that kind of solution for every agency. But it starts with leadership and defining the values that, as it clearly happened for us, had a broader impact to our overall organization. So it's a very exciting thing, I think, for a lot of owners that are looking to implement significant projects.
And I'll put a link to the IPI website in your show notes so everybody can find it there too.
Great.
So, what is the very best advice you have ever been given?
Oh, that's a good one. Boy, I've been given a lot of advice over my years. A very smart man once said, "Let your intellect gain supremacy over your emotions." And, I think we, this gentleman ran the capital program back in the 90s that I worked for. And it's as you and I were talking about, Sue, it's moving from punishment to partnership. And to me, it's not about letting an angry reaction because a schedule has slipped. It's about getting together and doing the hard work. And I've seen that time and again. And our hotel's a great example. That was 5 months behind schedule about 8 months ago, and now it is opening on schedule this July 12th. So come out and enjoy our new hotel July 12th.
Looks beautiful. Looks like a blue glass, beautiful entrance now to SFO. It's gorgeous.
Yep.
And people can stay there too.
Yep, they can. There's 351 rooms, 4-star product. Come on out, great restaurants. I think it's
Perfect.
going to be more than just the travelers that'll enjoy it.
So I always like to have a resource for our listeners. Can you recommend something for Construction Nation that you think would be great for them?
I think through our journey and our values, and as we set our airport always aimed at being exceptional, I think Good to Great has been a really wonderful resource, and it was required reading of the leadership team here. And then the 7 Habits, which I never tire of, the 7 Habits of highly effective people. I would say those are probably the 2 most influential books in my own mind.
Excellent. And I put links to those also in the show notes so people can grab them off of Amazon. I think they're both available in audio too on Audible. So if you don't like to read, you can listen.
Sounds
So
good.
do you have some parting advice for Construction Nation? Things that they might be able to do tomorrow to start implementing some of these great things that you've done at SFO?
I think the first step we took back with Terminal 2, as I was talking before, is redefining what program success. And I mean, I do it in a different big ideas way, not in the narrow way we define project success, and look beyond the program implementation team and really get to know your stakeholders, all of your stakeholders that really are relying upon the successful delivery. But start with redefining what success. And success can be, like I talked about, around 40 years of operating a facility, or it can be other goals you have in delivery. Small business goals, those help define success of particularly public agency projects. Other things around the environmental goals, those are also, put those as those guiding principles in project delivery that would then define what success would look like across the broad spectrum. And then get to work on how do you make that happen. And clearly the way I think you'll find the way you make that happen is by full engagement and collaboration and partnership.
Yeah, because most of the time when people enter into a contract where there's goals like local hire or small business requirements, I think often the contractors and designers, even the CM firms, feel like they're put upon them as opposed to something for them to embrace and help with. So is there a way to sort of look at it a little differently as the owner to help that not to happen?
And, I think there is. And I think we've really looked outside the box on going beyond the mandated goals, the checking the box, really deciding that is an important value of our airport. For instance, we'll use that small business participation. And for, that the legacy we have here, I think, in the community is that there is opportunity, and it's important on big programs like this. And these are the kind of folks that were mentors of mine way back in the 90s. And so, redefining the success around these kinds of even political issues, that we all have to deal with, I think is very instrumental in defining project success. So I think there are ways to really bring these things to a much more manageable framework that doesn't seem like it's just a way to get through a process. It's more of now of an aspiration of the whole team. And then that's where the creativity comes from. And we've been able to develop such creativity in our design build program around small business. And we developed the 7 strategies back in Terminal 2, and it have even done more since then that has been really well acknowledged by the political leadership around San Francisco.
Wow, Ivar, I so appreciate you coming and taking time to share with the Construction Nation today. I'm sure that your words are going to help many people think differently or take that challenge ahead and push forward to really truly look towards creating. I loved your quote, going from punishment to partnership. And I so thank you. So Construction Nation, dream teams don't just happen. They're built one step at a time. Why not send out this episode to your team so they can help you? The more people you have helping, the faster you can build your construction dream team. You can't have your dream until you build your team. So please head on over to constructiondreamteam.com to sign up for our newsletter, and please subscribe to the podcast. Thanks for joining me today, and thanks, Ivar, so much. I'll catch you next time.